some of the transmission systems. When I came in, when I came in, we found, for example, let me use one, Takwel Otum Kitale network or line not having capacity to transmit generation from Takwel, because when we developed Selenkei, Sedet, and Alten, the solar power plants in the west of Rift, the transmission line capacity was not upgraded. And for the last 4 years, we are not transmitting, or we are not utilizing Takwel, which comes to the grid at 3 cents, 4 cents, because the transmission line is not able to carry both the solar from Alten, Selenkei, and Sedet, and carry the Takwel because of the order of merit of despite take or pay. So what do? We carry the expensive power from solar, which is intermittent and not good for the grid, and the hydro is sitting idle because we do not put some investment of 300 million to complete the capacity of the line to evacuate that power. That is currently going on. We'll finish in a few, maybe another 2 months. Similarly for Narok, Bomet, where the network to Olkaria has been built, the network from Bomet has been built all the way to Migori to support the tea factories in Bomet, Kericho, all the way to Awendo. And so we've got load shedding in Awendo, in Bomet, and Kericho in the evening. We don't have enough voltages. We are using Moroni 73 shillings power plant to support the voltages because we have not built Narok Bomet to allow the Olkaria power to go all the way to Awendo. So again, we are currently having sourcing a contractor. We've got funding, and we'll get most of that cheap geothermal power to go all the way down to Migori County and service that western part of the country. And these are network issues that should have really been addressed in terms of getting the grid more stable and being able to off-take or to carry the kind of load, the kind of power that we need in those regions in terms of managing demand and supply for the country. Honorable members, we are conscious. We are really working on the 2 areas in petroleum and energy, in the grid capacity, in generation, to coming and negotiating privately in my office or in another office to generate power when they can be, the auction process can be done in the open and the best price. IPP can take that license and generate power for us. Unfortunately, members, I must also say, power is not a quick fix. When we plan power today for the next 5 years, what we're doing is not for tomorrow. And so unless we do what we must do today, we'll have problems in 27, 28, 2029. So the challenges we are seeing today are the challenges of the yesteryears because of, and as we speak, you remember we had this moratorium. We don't have much power plants being built today, and as I talk to load shedding, what power plants are almost reaching completion to support us tomorrow, 25, 26, 27. Those are the challenges we are crumbling with, but I want to assure our honorable members that we are on top of it, and we'll ensure that we do not get into where the region is because of not planning. And so the leaders of
and the members of this committee, I'm delighted to be here this morning and humbled also to be making this presentation before my seniors. Allow me to begin by making a disclaimer. One is that, as you all know, that this housing levy is one of the things that was highly litigated. It is still before the courts. So today I'll try and avoid going to the merits and demerits of the housing levy per se, because that judgment will be made on the 24th of November, after which we should be free to talk about it in greater detail, but I'll try and cover as much as I can. Number 2, Chair, is that at the end of my submission, hoping that the work of this committee will effect some changes in the Constitution at some point, hopefully, I would like to submit two requests. One is that under Schedule 4 of our Constitution, where the Senate religiously allocates resources to the counties, there is a small omission in that our Constitution has envisioned urban areas to be devolved, but it is missing in Schedule 4. And what that means is that our urban areas are not getting any resources unless it is the money from the World Bank that comes in as conditional grants. And that is a big problem because our cities and towns are dying and decaying because of lack of investment. And number two, I'd like to make a submission before this committee that we need to relook at how we address the issue of marginalization. I think the way we have defined marginalization, it is a little bit unfair to the class of people we call the urban poor. And I'd like to submit before this committee that the urban poor is probably the most marginalized person in Kenya. And we need to relook at how we define marginalization. Because if we only define marginalization based on areas, and yet there is somebody who is probably a meal away from starvation, a person who has no basic sanitation, they actually pay to use ablution facilities. For someone who faces what we call the penalty of poverty, which is they pay 172% more for water than you and I. They pay up to 147% more for electricity. I think it is the high tide away. They're a huge population. Chair, before I then get into the presentation, allow me to set a little bit of context. We all know the issue of the housing levy. At some point, I had to run to my good senior, Professor Ndongo, because I was confused whether we were actually debating a housing bill or the finance bill. And so all that sweating, Chair, that you are seeing coming out is because I was...
You've become national, very famous with that sweating. And I'm happy you're talking about it because we're wondering what has become of Hinga.
Let me say, the Honorable Vice President, that when I went to Professor Ndongo for some counseling, I was expecting some lessons in economics, but he referred me to the Bible. And he read for me Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. And he told me, Hinga, out of the sweat of your brow, you shall eat. So sweating is biblical.
But the Bible seems to have helped in not sweating today.
Maybe a bit too early to call it. Chair, there is a very interesting report that was done by the World Bank in the year 2017. Now, like anybody who like to make comments on the issue matters to do with housing, just get a copy of that. It's available online. It is called Unavailable and Unaffordable. And I believe this study painted a very good picture about the housing situation in Kenya. There are things that are indisputable. And I think where things become a bit murky is the how to solve. But there are certain things that are not in dispute. Number one, we are one of the fastest urbanizing countries in the world. We have over 500,000 people who are coming to urban areas every year. That is a fact. Number two, Chair, is that if you look at the percentage of what you call the urban population, at the moment, and these are very old statistics, which is 2019, after the census, we had about 6.5 million Kenyans living in slums. That is also a fact. So if you're adding 500,000 people every year into urban areas, when they come to those urban areas, what do they find? Chair, they find something which is interesting, and I know a professor here will back me up because of it's a lot more in economics. Chair, what you find is that we have very low incomes in Kenya. and where you have low incomes, and then you have got very expensive land. Ordinarily, then what happens is that rentals tend to be very high. Okay, low incomes, expensive land, rents tend to be very high. And so, therefore, your working class, I'm not talking about people who are not working. I'm talking about your working class, people who wake up, some even earlier than we do, to go to work, cannot be able to afford the kind of rentals that we find in the urban areas. And then what happens is that they get pushed out in a process which is called gentrification. You start pushing them out, okay? But where do they go? Some may say, why can't they go to Mlolongo? Why can't they go to Kitengela where there is a lot of land? The challenge, Chair, is that they need to be close to where they work. Because again, if they move further away from where they work, the cost of transport becomes a hindrance. So where do they go? They go and set up informal settlements. And that is why, Chair, as of 2019, we had 1,141 informal settlements in this country. They do nothing. If we do nothing about it, Chair, in a few years' time, our major cities will be nothing but major slums. So that's also an important context to be able to put. Now, there is a study that has been done by the Center for Affordable Housing in Africa. In 2016, Nairobi had been ranked as having the third most expensive land of the cities that were polled in Africa. Today, Nairobi has the most expensive land in the continent. So how do you have most expensive land? You have got very low incomes. So this is an issue that I believe should be able to bring all of us together because it is ours to solve, irrespective of which political divide you come from. Even us who live in most affluent areas, you can attest that there is a slum next to where you live. And at some point, if we do nothing, a high wall is not going to keep you safe. There will be a slum right outside your gate. And so I believe that this issue of housing should actually not divide, but actually should bring people together. I was privileged to be in the last government, honorable chairs, and housing was part of the Jubilee agenda. Also, housing was a core pillar in the Azimio manifesto. As a matter of fact, where we ended, the Kenya Kwanza proposed 3% on the levy. We actually ended at where Azimio had proposed, which was 1.5%. So I would like to believe that if we are all genuine and we put away our political caps, we can be able to look at this matter of housing, soberly, and we can be able to agree. We may disagree, we may not agree on everything, but we agree we have a challenge. So, Chair, I'm going to go very quickly to the economics of housing because I think that is very, very, very important. The real merits of the levy itself. So I have a presentation, Chair, which is has 4 headings, which is a quick introduction, the economic context, the economic recovery, and then I'll go a little bit into the housing fund and offerings. Chair, the Kenya Kwanza government has a plan, and our plan is to have 1 million Kenyans owning their homes in this first dispensation. Now, Chair, the reason that number is not a thumbsuck, it is because in Kenya, we have a housing demand of 250 homes a year. The market is only able to produce 50,000. And of the 50,000, only 1,000 is affordable housing. So we have got 49,000 for the high end, that is a 3%. And then 97% of Kenyans are left with the 1,000 that is being produced by the market today. So our plan is ambitious and bold because we believe that we have a systemic failure in housing in Kenya. And for us to be able to understand how this systemic failure has stepped back into history and realize that at the turn of independence, when we came up with the housing policy, we were, as a government, building homes through National Housing Corporation, site and service, and that happened until the late 80s, when the infamous, when we got into trouble with the IMFs and the World Bank at the time, and we got into structural adjustments. And at that time, one of the things that we were told to exit from was housing. And from that point to date, the likes of National Housing Corporation has never received any funding from government. Most of you perhaps have lived in estates that were funded through National Housing Corporation or the old municipal councils. So, Chair, let me go quickly to the economics of housing, which I think is very important to understand. One, Chair, is that we know right now we are in a bit of an economic meltdown of some sort. And this did not just start now. It has been there from COVID. We never recovered from COVID. We are in Russia.